What is the special function for an individual or a group? I picked that phrase from the Merriam-Webster dictionary when I Googled the definition of the word vocation. Hello viewers, welcome to this episode of Ebenezer. Thank you for making time to include this network in this episode in your morning routine. We've been looking at the word vocation, having conversations with individuals to reflect on their vocational journey. From different perspectives, we've looked at people serving full-time within the Christian church and others who are serving in different capacities outside of the church, but equally finding themselves working on a vocation, a calling that is enabling them to use their gifts, their skills, their talents in the service of God, serving humanity. Last week we had a conversation with my colleagues and friends, Anita and Roland, who reflected on their faith journey and their vocational journey. They'll be back today to continue the story of their vocational journey and where that path took them to different parts of the world, serving in a different context. Indeed, the world has become a global village, and people serve crisscross different parts of the world. It's no longer a one-way traffic, people from one particular part of the world going to serve in another part of the world. It's people from both parts of the world crisscrossing. It's become a two-way traffic, any part of the world. People receive their calling, perceive the direction that God is leading them, and go to that place to serve. But it's not always flowing easily. It's never always distinct, the call. And the fact that you have the call and you know what the call is doesn't always make the path to that vocation smooth sailing. John Wesley, the leader of the Methodist movement, once declared, "The world is my parish." For John, it meant something different. Having been a priest in the Anglican Church, and that path was no longer viable. He was no longer able to serve within that path. And yet he had this calling. He knew that his vocation was full-time ministry. But the option of serving as an Anglican priest within the church was not viable. And so the declaration that the world is my parish was more like saying, I can serve anywhere, everywhere I am. I have this calling. This is what I perceive to be my vocation. I can still put my gifts into the Master's hands, and he will lead me anywhere in the world, anywhere at all. I want to look again at this word vocation as we sum up the theme of vocational journey with the conversation today. Many times we considered full-time ministry, vocational ministry in the church to be only that which is the unique path of serving as an ordained minister. We have been having conversations and mentioned that, reflected on the fact that we can serve God right where we are in different capacities. As much as God needs people, he calls people out to full-time ministry, to dedicate their lives to full-time religious ministry, clergy. God needs people all over the world to serve exactly where they are planted. God prepares people, equips people, anoints his people to serve exactly where they are planted, in any profession, in any capacity. Others, as they serve in their employment or occupation, they also make time to volunteer. They also make time to volunteer in additional, if they have capacity, either later in life after they have raised their children and they have some time in their hands, or just alongside what they're doing. Volunteer either in the church or parachurch organizations or other organizations, not-for-profit organizations, to make a difference, to use their skills in addition to earning a living, but also to make a difference and consider themselves contributing to the bigger mission of the Church of Jesus Christ. I started by volunteering as an on-call chaplain in the hospital. As much as I was working in a faith organization as a direct support professional, I had extra time in my hands, so I signed up to be a volunteer on-call chaplain, to take shifts around the clock on the day that it's assigned, so that at the time of crisis, when people encounter health crisis, when people are faced with end-of-life decisions and challenges in healthcare setting, I and many of my colleagues make ourselves available to be present. We may not have the answers. We may not know what to say at any time, but we may just be present to help people think through the feelings, sort out the feelings they are feeling and think through the next steps, especially when it's at the end of life, an unexpected situation that throws the family individuals into what feels like a chaos. To be present and to point out, to bring a cup of water, to sit and listen, to help with a phone call, or just sit as people go through the most difficult period, transition imaginable in life. And that's how I encountered Anita. Eventually, I got a position in that very hospital as a spiritual care practitioner. And both of us served for a period of time. Our vocation, her a Canadian, myself an immigrant living in Canada and working in Canada, serving in the same field, contributing towards the same goal, making a difference in people's lives. I want to bring them back to tell us more about their vocational journey, where the path has taken them, what parts of the world they have served in, and what that experience has felt like. I will see you on the other side of the conversation. Ebenezer. Welcome back, viewers. We are privileged that we have, for the second time, my colleagues, my friends, honored to call them my family, back to share their story with us. They came last week. We met them. We got to know something about them. And they're back today to tell us more about their story, the miracles in their lives. Welcome back, Anita and Roland. Thank you for coming back. For those who did not meet you last week, please tell us your names, introduce yourselves, and there's something new or different about yourselves.
Well, I'm Roland Simon, served as a pastor. Actually, I've been serving as a pastor for 30 years. I'm just retired in 2020. We live right now in Vancouver. We grew up, actually, both of us in the Vancouver area. And so, yeah, it's a privilege to be on this program. My wife, Anita.
And I'm Anita. And, yeah.
And you told us about your faith journey and the miracles along the way, the unique way that God called you and led you to where He was going to place you for ministry. As you come back today, tell us more about your ministry, how that path has been picked any time in point of your ministry journey, and just let us know how the journey was.
I think as I look back on my life and as I look to the future, I want to put on glasses of faith. We can walk all through life and miss the fingerprints of God, where He's smudging you everywhere, because we're not looking with the eyes of faith. And so one of the prayers might be, Lord, help me to see with the eyes of faith the people you're touching and the people that you can touch in my sphere of influence. You can't do everything, but you can reach out to the people that are in your sphere of influence, or allow God to touch you through them. And you'll hear a little bit about that. I think a little bit about my ministry, my vocation. So I spent the first 3 years of my ministry in Walnut Grove in North Langley here in the Lower Mandan in British Columbia, serving as a pastor of a very fast-growing church. We had lots of interesting dynamics there, and we could see God work in wonderful ways. Then I was called by Lutheran Church Canada to see if I would be their missionary to Ukraine. This was in 1993, just after Perestroika. Perestroika is just after communism has fallen, and Perestroika is to rebuild. So I came into Ukraine in 1993. It was just terrible there in the sense that there was, the inflation was horrible. Like if you had $300,000 and you could buy a house at that time, within 6 months, that $300,000 could only buy a car. Wow. 6 months later, that $3,000 could only buy a couch. 3 months later, or 6 months later, that $300,000 could only buy a loaf of bread. That's how bad the inflation was. And many people were just devastated because all of their finances were just wiped out because of inflation in that country at that time. And so I came there to serve. And one of the problems was I couldn't speak the language. It was very, very hard. I had to wait for a translator. And I thought to myself, what I've done, I've given up everything to come here, and I feel totally useless. And then I had to realize, wait a minute, I remember once someone asked me, how do you like being in Ukraine? And I says, well, I don't like being here, but, he says, why don't you leave? I says, because it's not about what I like. It's about where God wants me to be. Yeah. I remember writing a paper for Dr. Packer, J.I. Packer at Regent College, and it was a hard paper, and I was on my knees in tears, crying over this paper. How am I going to finish it? What do I do? So I thought, I have to see Packer. So I went to see Dr. J.I. Packer, and I said, Dr. J.I. Packer, I can't write this paper. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm on my knees in tears trying to write this paper. He says, son, can you think of a better place to be than on your knees before the kingdom of God, before the very throne of his grace, pouring out your heart? Well, that already is worth its weight in gold in terms of learning something, isn't it? And then I found out when I was in Ukraine on my knees in tears, I thought, this is a good place to be. I don't have to like it. I just have to know that in the midst of all of this unrest and uncertainty, I'm in the will of God and I'm where he wants me to be.
That's wonderful.
That gave me the joy of the Lord at that time. So I served in Ukraine for 13 years, from 1993 to 2005. In 2001, Anita and I got married. Anita's from Vancouver area. We've been long friends for a long, long time. Got married later on in life because God didn't free my heart at that time. But when he freed my heart, I knew exactly who I wanted to marry. Of all the girls in the world, it was only Anita for me. And then in 2005, my contract in Ukraine ended, and we came back to Canada, where I was able to serve at Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Kitchener, Ontario. And so that was a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that. And again, at that point in time, Anita was wondering what she should do, and when we were in Kitchener and she didn't have a job, and what was she going to do? But something God had taught her when we were in Ukraine. When we were in Ukraine and we just got married and she was living with me and I was concerned about her and she wanted to know what to do. Well, she had the strength and the courage to go to an orphanage. There's a story behind that, and I'll let her tell you the story.
Please, yes, we want to hear that.
Well, I've recognized the importance of what I'll call the ministry of presence in life. And that was first shown to me when I was in Kenya, actually, when we as a group of young adults from Vancouver came to visit various churches, couples, individuals, families in Kenya. And what struck me was the fact that our presence meant so much to them. We didn't have to do anything, just the fact that we were there, that there were other Christians present to them from a different part of the world. So that ministry of presence I did not understand at the time of how important it was to them. Then in Ukraine, when I was volunteering in an orphanage with the littlest ones, yet pre-verbal, so they couldn't speak any language. My verbal language was horrible, so we had something in common. But again, it wasn't language that I was able to necessarily communicate, though I did communicate with them, but it was my presence with them, my interaction with them, even though it was limited because of the policies at the orphanage. But I was also able to pray for them individually by name. And then that led me to volunteering in the hospital and also spiritual care practitioner in the hospital. Again, the ministry of presence. So I would encourage all of you in your sphere of influence that who God has created you to be, who you are, the gifts, talents, and abilities he's given you, whatever they might be, your presence and encouragement and support for other people, whatever that looks like, is so important. The ministry of your presence to other people is what people need, especially people who are hurting.
That's wonderful, Anita. That's wonderful. I learned so much from you as we work together alongside each other in spiritual care in the hospital.
Vice versa.
Thank you kindly. Now, I'd like to ask each of you, any word of advice, any word of encouragement to someone who either is contemplating that path of ministry or someone who is already there and sometimes facing situations where, like what Roland said, in Ukraine and feeling like useless. What will be your words of encouragement?
I think I can go to Psalm 119, verse 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I noticed that those words are very interesting. A lamp and a light. They're not that powerful. It's not saying he's a big torchlight and a big sun, that's going to light up my whole future and I'm going to see everything ahead of me.
Yeah.
But a lamp into my path. I don't know if you've ever taken a lamp. I think Florence, of course, is probably smiling inside because she.
Yes, I have.
What it means to take a lamp, and of course,
or a little flashlight.
Or a little flashlight. And I think of Ukraine and some of the villages, and you got to be careful because at night the cows come home, and when the cows come home, they leave things on the streets.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you put a light to see that you don't step in those things, especially if you're dressed up to go to church or something. So
exactly.
I think God doesn't give you a big picture of everything. God is the big picture, but he gives you enough light to see your next step. So for those of you that need to see more than your next step, that's not faith, is it?
Yeah.
Faith is knowing that God's got it in control and that he'll give you exactly what you need for your next step. So pray God gives you the gift of a decision, so that whatever you're trying to do, you say, Lord, I don't know, but you do. And you'll give me just enough light for the next step I take. And whoever he placed in my path, Lord, help me to have the eyes of faith. And I just want to pause just another episode I had, East Africa and India. I didn't talk about India, but I had the privilege of meeting Mother Teresa when I was in India.
Oh.
And she said to me, each person you see Christ in that person. And now that person of Christ to minister to you. Or she would say, God has taught me to sit and listen to somebody for half an hour. And in that first 15 or 20 minutes of listening to that person, I'll know whether I'm to learn or whether I'm to teach. But it's by listening first. And so I think about where you are right now and see how God is going to give you the next step forward, and know that you have a sphere of influence. Maybe God is touching your life through somebody else right now. Or maybe God wants you to touch somebody else's life. And maybe it's like Anita says, and maybe it's just your physical presence in being with somebody. And that is being Christ to them, because in a sense, you are Christ to other people, as he uses you as his hands and feet and his heart and his eyes. And so give you the eyes of faith to see what he's doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Anita, do you have anything to add as we end?
Again, I guess I would just confer with Roland has just said. So many times in my life, I have not known what the next step is. Mm-hmm. And I have struggled and cried out to God, what am I supposed to do? And he doesn't give me the big picture. I wouldn't be able to handle the big picture. But he has given me what I need at that time to take the next step, and the next step after that, and the next step after that. And so it's a process, and we're all in process on our journey of faith. And God's not finished with us yet. And so if you think that he's finished with you yet, he definitely isn't. Just be open to whatever the next step he's showing you to take, and to go through that in faith.
And how exciting it is. And how exciting it is that you can be on the program now and watching. And I can't wait until you meet Daniel.
Exactly.
When you meet with Daniel, he's just going to open up a whole new world for you, which is amazing, because God has opened that world to him and to us as well. So praise the Lord.
So you are a gift that keeps giving. You've come to us as a gift, but you came bearing gifts, introducing us to someone that will get to know. Thank you very much, Roland and Anita. Thank you. I'm blessed by your friendship, and we keep praying that God will continue using you as he continue using us in ways that he only knows. We don't know who will be the person sitting next to you next time, telling you your next assignment is my home. Hopefully it will be somewhere within here, not too far from where family is. But thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us, Florence, and thank you for listening.
And have a gentle rest of your day.
Thank you.
And you also.
Welcome back, and thank you for sticking around. We've had great conversations with different individuals reflecting on their vocational journey. Concluding today with the second part of conversation that I've held with Anita and Roland. They have shared with us their faith journey and how that connects directly to their vocational journey, and how they have served in different parts of the world, met different people, and how those connections and those networks have continued throughout their vocational life. I hope that as you reflect on your own vocational journey, that which you're doing that's making a difference, whether it's your employment, your volunteer position, whether you are called full-time ordained clergy, all of them contributing to the mission of God in this world. The goal is always serving God by serving His people. I hope one or another of our guests, their reflection, their story has inspired you, will stay with you, or you've connected, for there is something parallel about their paths and the path that you are in. In Ephesians 4:1-3, Paul writes, "As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Live worthy of the calling you have received." We've all received a calling. We all make a contribution to the Church of Christ. We all make a contribution in life in different ways. Some are more visible than others, but all are important. What is your vocation? What is that calling that you have lived into or you perceive to be the path you're about to take and walk into? I hope that one of the conversations with the many guests that have reflected on their vocational journey have helped in one way or another. Either you have identified with someone as they reflect on their vocational journey, either you've been inspired by one of the stories, or just learned something, a new thing, or known something about someone and the path that they have taken. All have taken very different paths. My path is different. Your path may be different. The beauty of it is that our goal, our mission, our end result is similar. We are serving God by serving humanity. Because we love God and obey God, He commands us to love one another and serve one another. I pray and hope that you are finding fulfillment, whether it's employment or volunteer position, whatever it is that you're doing it as unto the Lord, finding fulfillment as we wait for the Lord's return. We are now winding up the conversation on vocational journeys, and we hope to continue with other themes. In Ebenezer, there are multiple themes that we've been exploring. The themes include life transitions, developmental stages in life and in faith. We look at faith journeys, people's different paths, how their faith began and where the journey took them. We look at family lives. We have looked at ways of sustaining and supporting families through pastoral care, through counseling, therapy, different ways to enhance human relationships within the family and individual lives. We also looked at different ways that young adults embrace life as they transition into adult our life. Thank you for joining us. Take some time to reflect on your own vocational journey and share the story of where God has led you and how God has led you with someone in your life, someone within your network. Encourage someone at the onset of their vocational path, or someone right in their path encountering either a challenge or a detour, or questioning and wondering what exactly is the path leading them to. Roland mentioned, and Anita too, that sometimes we only see briefly, we only see the next step. There is a light that only lights that shorter distance, and we don't see the bigger picture. The short path that we are seeing may not look certain, may not look familiar, may not look or seem to be exactly what you had in mind when you responded to God's call. He only shows us what we need to know, what we have capacity to know to take the next step. He knows the bigger picture, the end of the journey, what the path looks like, and he knows that we are capable. He has equipped us with the resources we need to keep going. So if you have been through that, if you have had such an experience, you may be a mentor to someone you don't know or may never meet by sharing your story. And for those who maybe are towards the later part of their vocational journey and have cut down, have more time in their hands, you may find yourself able to help others along, volunteer your time, and mentor other people at the beginning part of their journey, or connect people with potential employers, areas of need, places where they can continue serving. Whatever resources you have at your disposal, use them to brighten the lives of others who may be needing a hand, a mentor, or a friend to journey with. Take some time to share those stories. Mark your stones of help. Recount your blessings. And have a gentle week. Ebenezer.